It started the way all disasters in my life seemed to start, at my mother's house. It was supposed to be a casual dinner, just my parents, my older sister Kendra, her teenage daughter Madison, and me with my 4-year-old, Nora. We were sitting in the living room, plates in laps, pretending this wasn't our first family gathering in months. The air was thick with that special brand of tension only families like mine know how to cultivate. Nora was being her usual energetic self, dancing, babbling, climbing on the armrests. Madison, glued to her phone and rolling her eyes, looked up just long enough to sneer, "Can someone muzzle her already?" I should have left right then. Instead, I gently told Nora to calm down and offered her a juice box. She hugged my leg, then bounded toward the stairs that led down to the basement playroom. Then everything slowed. Madison stood up, followed her. I didn't think anything of it until I heard the thud, then the scream. I ran. I don't remember moving. I was just suddenly at the staircase, looking down at my daughter's crumpled body. Her head was twisted at a wrong angle, and blood trickled from her ear. Her legs were trembling, twitching. She wasn't crying, just staring, blankly. "What did you do?" I screamed at Madison. She was halfway down the steps, frozen, her face slack like she hadn't expected me to hear it. "She was in the way," she said, almost bored. I picked Nora up, feeling the unnatural way her body slumped against mine. My mom had the nerve to say, "Oh, she's just faking it for attention." Madison didn't push her. I saw her shove her. I was crying now. "She's 4. She weighs 35 pounds. Kendra scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. She probably tripped." "I'm calling an ambulance," I said. That's when the true horror revealed itself, not the fall, not the injury, but the response. "No, you're not," my dad barked. "We don't need that kind of trouble." "She'll be fine," Kendra added. "Kids fall all the time. Not down 15 stairs." I screamed. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. My mother tried to block me, physically block me, from dialing 911. I shoved her aside. The dispatcher's voice was the only lifeline I had. I gave the address. I said the words I never imagined I'd have to say. "My 4-year-old daughter has a head injury. I think she's dying." When the paramedics arrived, my parents rolled their eyes. Kendra made a comment about attention-seeking behavior running in the family. Madison had already gone back to scrolling her phone. The EMTs had to pry Nora from my arms. She still hadn't said a word. They rushed her to the hospital in the back of the ambulance while I followed behind in my car, my fingers numb on the steering wheel. I don't remember the drive. I don't remember parking. I only remember the look on the doctor's face after the CT scan. Something between dread and caution. "She has a skull fracture," he said. "There's brain swelling. We're moving her into emergency surgery." I nodded like I understood, like I wasn't dying inside. I asked them to call me when she was out of surgery, then stepped into the hallway and called my mother. "She has a fractured skull. She almost died," I said. There was a long silence. Then, a laugh. "Oh, Elise, you always were theatrical." That was the moment something inside me turned off. Or maybe it turned on. Because in that moment, I knew I wasn't just fighting for Nora's life. I was fighting a war against the people who created me. The surgery lasted 6 hours. I sat in that cold waiting room with vomit on my shirt, Nora's unicorn beret in my fist, and a silent scream lodged in my chest that wouldn't come out. Every hour that passed without news felt like a year. Every second was a punishment for not walking out of that house the second Madison opened her mouth. When the surgeon finally approached, his scrubs were stained, and his eyes were heavy. "She made it," he said. But it was close. We had to relieve the pressure from the swelling. There could be long-term damage. We won't know the extent until she wakes up. But she's stable. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Relief doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels like your lungs are collapsing in reverse. I called my mom again. Not because she deserved to know. I just needed something. Humanity, maybe. "She survived," I said. "Well, that's good," she replied flatly. "So, are you done with the dramatics now?" I stared at my phone like it had betrayed me. "You think this is drama?" I whispered. "She almost died." "I'm sorry she fell," she said. "But blaming Madison is disgusting. She's a child. So is Nora. That's different." There it was. Kendra and I had always known there was a favorite. Madison could have lit the house on fire, and they'd have blamed me for giving her the matches. The next 3 days in the ICU were a blur of machines, wires, and sleeplessness. Nora drifted in and out of consciousness. She didn't speak. She didn't move her right side. I stayed at her bedside, feeding her iced chips and praying into the hum of the monitors. Not one family member visited. No flowers. No calls. No messages. The silence was deafening. On day 5, the neurosurgeon told me Nora might need months of therapy, possibly years. Speech, occupational, physical. Her frontal lobe had taken damage. Executive function, emotional regulation. No one could guarantee what would return or what wouldn't. I walked into the hospital bathroom, locked the door, and screamed into my hands until my throat burned. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Kendra. Madison is going to be held accountable, one way or another. She responded with a laughing emoji. That night, I started a notebook. I titled the first page, "For Nora." Underneath, I wrote, "Date of incident. Witness statements, none. Medical reports, to request. Madison's known behavioral issues. Family's recorded responses." I started recording every call, screenshotting every text. They thought I was exaggerating? Good. Let them laugh now. Because they had no idea who I became the moment my daughter hit the floor. On day 7, Nora moved her hand. Then her lips parted, and she whispered, "Mama." I cried so hard I fell to my knees beside her bed. That night, I stared at the ceiling of the hospital room and made myself a promise. They would never hurt her again. Not with their hands. Not with their mouths. Not with their cowardice. And if it took every breath in my body, I'd make sure the world saw what they were. The hospital discharged Nora after 11 days. She couldn't walk unassisted. She spoke in slurred, stuttering fragments. She flinched when people raised their voices. Hell, when anyone moved too fast. She'd been a fearless, loud little girl. Now, she was quiet, cautious, a flicker of who she used to be. The doctors gave me a list of specialists, pediatric neurologists, trauma therapists, speech pathologists. I gave up my job. There was no room for anything but Nora. She needed me, and I wasn't going to miss a single second. I sent a mass text to my family. Nora's home. She's going to need long-term therapy. If any of you care enough to visit, this is your chance. I didn't get one reply, not even a thumbs up. I drove to my parents' house 3 weeks later. I wasn't there to fight. I just wanted them to see what they had done, what they'd refused to acknowledge. My mom answered the door. She looked annoyed, like I was interrupting a TV show. "I brought Nora," I said, holding my daughter against my hip. She wanted to say hi to Grandma. My mom leaned against the doorframe. "Does she remember falling?" "She didn't fall," I said. "Madison pushed her." My mom sighed, waving her hand like I was a fly buzzing near her face. "I'm not doing this again. She has brain damage. PTSD. Night terrors. Do you get that?" "She's probably faking half of it," she muttered. "Kids are manipulative." I couldn't speak. My throat just closed. Nora buried her face in my neck. "You're a disgrace," I whispered. "I raised 2 daughters just fine," she snapped. "But only one of them knows how to keep her mouth shut." I turned and walked away, clutching Nora like a lifeline. That night, I added a new section to my notebook. Patterns of gaslighting. She's faking it. Don't be dramatic. Madison didn't mean it. Kids fall all the time. She was in the way. I had recordings now. Phone calls with my mother and Kendra, both doubling down on their version of the truth. Laughing. Minimizing. Making me out to be the unstable one. I played one of them for Nora's therapist, Dr. Hanley. She paused at midway. "I want to be clear," she said. "This is abuse. Not just what happened to Nora, but how your family is responding. Their denial, their cruelty. It's emotional abuse. And it's affecting both of you." She asked for my permission to document it in Nora's chart. I said yes. That was the first time anyone in a position of power validated what I already knew in my bones. I was not crazy. They were monsters. And monsters hide in plain sight when no one dares to look. 3 days later, Madison posted a TikTok. I only saw it because one of her classmates sent it to me anonymously. In it, she reenacted the fall, using a doll, giggling about how some kids are too dumb to stay upright. She used the hashtag natural selection. It had over 800 likes before it was taken down. That was it. That was my last straw. They could gaslight me. They could ignore me. But they would not mock my daughter. Not in front of the world. I opened a new document on my laptop. Plan of action. Contact Madison's school. File report with Child Protective Services. Request full medical records. Begin financial audits on parents and Kendra. Locate proof of Kendra's rumored affair. Legal consult. I looked at Nora, sleeping beside me with a stuffed turtle in her arms. "You rest, baby," I whispered. "Mommy's got work to do." I started with the school. I contacted the principal of Madison's private academy, a smug place with ivy on the walls and tuition that could buy a car. I emailed the TikTok link, a detailed incident report, Nora's medical records, and a copy of the CPS intake form I had already filed. Then I made it impossible to ignore. I posted the same video on a private subreddit for parents in our district, with the caption, "This 13-year-old shoved my 4-year-old daughter down a staircase, causing permanent brain damage. Here's how she mocks it online. Still think your kids are safe around her." It went semi-viral. Within 24 hours, I was contacted by 3 parents who had their own horror stories: bullying, stolen phones, a teacher who resigned because Madison threatened her. The school indefinitely suspended her within the week. It wasn't expulsion, but it was public. Her name was whispered in every hallway. Her social media accounts vanished. CPS opened an investigation. Kendra tried to spin it like we were the ones being harassed. "We're being targeted by online mobs," she whined in a voicemail. "You're being held accountable," I said out loud to no one. Step 1, complete. Step 2 required patience. I had overheard enough snippets of conversation over the years, talk of moving money around, helping a friend out under the table. No need to report that income to know my parents were hiding something. I filed an anonymous tip with the IRS Fraud Division. I attached copies of property records, business filings, and evidence of undeclared rental income. My father had a small consulting firm on paper. In reality, he did cash gigs and claimed losses every year. I hired a friend of a friend, a forensic accountant who owed me a favor, to help me package everything neatly. It was practically a gift-wrapped audit. 2 months later, they got the letter. My mom called me in a rage. "You ungrateful little snake. Do you know what you've done?" "Yeah," I said. "I protected my daughter. Something you've never done for yours." She hung up. Step 3, my sister. Kendra always played the polished career woman, VP at a finance firm, always in heels, always name-dropping. But I knew things. I knew about the affair she'd been having with her boss for over a year. His name was Trevor. Married, with twins. She thought she was subtle. She wasn't. Screenshots. Hotel bookings. Venmo transactions with dumb captions like lunch wine glass winking face. I sent everything anonymously, of course, to Trevor's wife. And to the company's HR department. By the end of the week, Kendra was out of a job. Trevor resigned too. My sister left a 3-minute voicemail sobbing, begging me to stop. I didn't reply. Because it wasn't over. I took Nora's case to a personal injury lawyer. We filed a civil suit against Kendra and her minor daughter for emotional and physical damages. The lawyer warned me that suing family would get ugly. "I have no family," I told him. The lawsuit made local news. The headlines didn't name Madison, she was a minor, but the dots connected quickly in our small town. At first, Kendra fought it, claiming I was exploiting the situation. But I had documentation. Photos. Medical bills. Expert testimony. Therapist notes. The works. They settled for $380,000. Every cent went into a trust for Nora's care. People started crossing the street to avoid my parents. Old friends ghosted Kendra. Madison's name became poison. The girl who laughed about hurting a child was now the one no one wanted to sit next to. And I didn't feel proud. I felt clean. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the black sheep. I was the wolf. Revenge doesn't feel like fireworks. It's not a dramatic crescendo. It's quiet. Like a wound closing. A scab forming over rot. I watched it all unfold from the sidelines. Just a mother taking her daughter to therapy, grocery shopping, minding her business. But underneath, I was dismantling an entire ecosystem of cruelty, brick by brick. The school tried to keep Madison's suspension quiet, but whispers spread like wildfire. PTA moms are the best gossip engines in the world. Suddenly, Madison wasn't welcome at slumber parties. Playdates dried up. Classmates called her baby killer behind her back. She was transferred to a public middle school across town. Kendra tried damage control, painting me as hysterical. But people had seen the video. They knew. I didn't have to convince anyone anymore. Then came the audit. The IRS froze my parents' accounts. Their modest consulting business? Red flagged. Assets under review. I heard from a cousin that they sold one of their rental properties in a panic. My father called me at 2 a.m. and left a voicemail filled with curses, ending with, "You've ruined us." I saved that voicemail. Played it back a few times just to remind myself that the same man who once told me I was a burden was now choking on his own words. I never responded. I never needed to. By fall, Kendra was working at a car rental desk. She'd been blacklisted from several firms in the industry. Her LinkedIn quietly disappeared. I knew from someone in HR that her references had been flagged for ethical violations. Meanwhile, Nora was saying full sentences again. We did puzzles. She laughed more. Her walk still had a slight limp, but her speech improved weekly. We'd play this game where she'd tell me, "Mama, I'm getting better," and I'd say, "You're already better than the whole world." Her therapist said she showed signs of PTSD, yes, but also resilience. We were giving her the tools, the safety, the love. It hit me during one session, watching Nora color a rainbow with Dr. Hanley, that none of them ever really saw her. They didn't see the child who lit up rooms. They saw inconvenience, background noise. That's why they could mock her pain. That's why they could dismiss it. They never deserved her in the first place. Still, I wasn't done. Not yet. I went back to the notebook, the one marked for Nora, and added a final section. Social consequences. I sent recordings of my mother and Kendra's most damning conversations, cruel jokes, admissions of neglect, to select family members. Aunts, cousins, old church friends. I didn't ask for support. I just wanted people to know who they really were. The fallout was swift. My parents were removed from the neighborhood association board. Kendra lost touch with most of the family. No one wanted to be associated with the people who covered for a child abuser. And still, not one apology. Not one attempt at amends. They thought their silence would shield them. That I'd eventually cool off. That time would work its eraser magic. But I'm not built like that. Forgiveness isn't peace. Accountability is. One afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. "You've made your point. Let it go." I stared at it for a full minute, then replied. "She was 4, and you pushed her." I blocked the number. That night, Nora climbed into bed with me and whispered, "I don't want to go back to Grandma's house ever again." "You never will," I said. And I meant it. The lawsuit settlement came through 6 months after we filed. $380,000. I remember staring at the check like it was radioactive. It felt surreal, like money couldn't possibly quantify what Nora had been through. But I deposited it, opened a trust in her name, locked it down tight with a lawyer who specialized in protecting minors from predatory family members. Then I bought her a swing set. Just one stupid, joyful thing. It arrived in boxes on our porch. We spent a whole Saturday putting it together, Nora handing me screws like they were treasure. She laughed when she first swung. I hadn't heard her laugh like that since before. She called it my spaceship. Said it made her feel like she could fly again. We celebrated quietly. Just the two of us. No cake. No phone calls. Just air in our lungs, a safe backyard, and no monsters at the table. Meanwhile, my family was unraveling in slow motion. Madison had to repeat 8th grade. Kendra tried to enroll her in a new private school, but word had spread. They declined. Public school was hell for her. According to a mutual acquaintance, she started therapy but refused to take accountability. Blamed me. Claimed I had turned everyone against her. Let her. My parents withdrew from their country club. The audit wasn't just financial. It exposed years of unethical write-offs and unreported income. They paid fines, lost business licenses, and had liens placed on their properties. At one point, my father sent an email. Short. No greeting. No sign-off. "We don't forgive you." I smiled when I read it. They still didn't get it. They thought I wanted forgiveness from them. The truth is, I didn't care if they forgave me. I wasn't trying to hurt them just for revenge. I wasn't lashing out from anger. I was documenting consequences. Their consequences. For what they did. For what they let happen. For what they mocked. Dr. Hanley helped me organize everything, photos, recordings, therapy logs, medical documentation, into a digital binder. She said I might want to keep it in case Nora ever wanted to understand the full story when she was older. I burned a copy onto a flash drive. Labeled it Truth. I don't know if Nora will ever want to see it, but it exists. That matters. One night, Nora asked, "Mama, am I broken?" I felt my chest collapse. "No, baby," I said. "You're healing. That's different." "Why did they hate me?" She was 4. 4. "I don't think they hated you," I said gently. "I think they didn't know how to love someone better than themselves." She nodded like she understood more than she should. I kissed her forehead. "You're not broken. You're a miracle." After she fell asleep, I sat in the dark and listened to the old voicemails again. My mother laughing. My father accusing. Kendra sneering. Madison saying she was in the way. I don't know why I listened. Maybe I needed to remember. Maybe I needed to hear it with new ears, now that I wasn't scared anymore. I transferred the files to the flash drive and deleted them from my phone. Closure doesn't come all at once. Sometimes it comes in the form of silence. A silence you choose. It's been 3 years. Nora's in 1st grade now. She wears glasses with purple frames and reads better than half the kids in her class. She still limps a little, but she runs anyway. Every week, her therapist tells me she's progressing beautifully. That's the word they use beautifully. It makes me cry every time. We moved out of state last year. New schools, new neighbors, no ghosts. I changed my number, locked down my social media, and legally blocked all contact from my parents, Kendra, and Madison. I thought it would feel like cutting off a limb. It felt like exhaling. One afternoon, I was going through storage boxes when I found the notebook. For Nora. I hadn't opened it since we moved. It was heavier than I remembered. Inside, every step of the war I had waged. The notes, the screenshots, the names, the dates, every petty, cruel, manipulative thing they'd said and done, inked in my handwriting. All of it. I sat on the floor and reread the first entry. My 4-year-old daughter has a head injury. I think she's dying. I cried again. Not the ugly, shaking kind from before. This time, it was quiet. Cleansing. After I closed the notebook, I pulled out the flash drive labeled Truth and locked it in a fireproof safe. Someday, maybe when she's 16, or 20, or 40, Nora might want to know everything. Not just the version we tell in safe language, but the whole truth. What was done to her. What her mother did in return. Until then, I'll hold it for her. I still get emails sometimes. From old family members, trying to stir the pot. Some guilt-drenched cousin asking, "Don't you think it's time to let it go?" Others trying to shame me, like I'm the reason the family fell apart. They never understood. The family didn't fall apart. It was never a family. It was a cage. And I'm not sorry I broke the lock. I still have hard days. There are nights when Nora wakes up screaming, her small body drenched in sweat, calling out for me. I rush to her, every single time. I hold her until the panic passes. She looks up at me with wide, tear-soaked eyes and whispers, "You came." I always say the same thing. I always will. Because that's what they never did. Not once. They let a child bleed on their stairs and laughed about it. They let her mother cry herself to sleep and called it drama. They abandoned me at the bottom of a staircase and thought I'd stay down there. But I didn't. I rose. I fought. And I won. People say revenge is poison. That it leaves you hollow. They're wrong. Real revenge, the kind rooted in justice, protection, truth, is a purge. It doesn't destroy you. It burns away what was never meant to stay. And in its place, you build something new. Nora and I built something no one can tear down again. Not a family. A fortress.